Despite being a pivotal part of the Beatles, Ringo Starr was one of the band members who had the least amount of creative input. He was always a supportive band member, though, as he would encourage his fellow Beatles when they were writing, and he was always excited about hearing what the band had to offer. In many ways, Starr functioned as the emotional anchor of the group, steady, reliable, and deeply attuned to the chemistry that made the band work. That being said, despite his enthusiasm, there were some songs Starr despised. One of the first tracks he hated was the first track he recorded with the Beatles, Love Me Do. Starr was always annoyed by the song because he was cut from it before he even had the chance to play on it. George Martin had hired a session drummer and opted to use him instead, despite Starr being there and ready to play. For a musician who had only just secured his place in one of the most promising bands in Britain, the decision was more than a technical choice. It was a quiet blow to his confidence. "I don't think Ringo ever got over that," said Paul McCartney. He had to go back up to Liverpool and everyone asked, "How did it go in the smoke?" He'd say, "B-side's good," but Ringo couldn't admit to liking the A-side, not being on it. The remark captures not just a moment of disappointment, but the subtle way pride and insecurity could coexist in those early Beatles years. That early slight arguably set the tone for Starr's relationship with certain Beatles songs. Even as he settled into the group and became an essential part of their sound, there were always moments where he felt slightly on the outside of the creative process. In a band largely driven by the songwriting engine of John Lennon and McCartney, Starr's role was often reactive rather than directive, interpreting ideas rather than initiating them. It wasn't necessarily resentment, but it did mean he developed a sharper instinct for what he connected with and what he didn't. Starr was never a technical show-off. His brilliance came from feel, timing, and restraint. When a track didn't align with that instinct, he was far more likely to disengage than try to force himself into it. That explains why his enthusiasm could vary so dramatically from song to song. He played best when he believed in what he was playing. Little Child was a song from the band's debut written specifically for Ringo Starr. It was always intended to be a filler song, but regardless, Starr refused to sing on it. The refusal wasn't arrogance, it was taste. There were other songs on the album which Starr preferred, and he insisted he sing on one of these instead. He ended up performing on I Wanna Be Your Man, which became one of his biggest hits. In hindsight, that decision was crucial. It showed that Starr understood his own voice and persona better than he was often given credit for, choosing material that suited his charm and delivery rather than settling for something subpar. While the Beatles were often quite unified with the songs they wrote, there were some tracks so polarizing that almost every member of the band ended up disliking them. Maxwell's Silver Hammer was a track that nearly every band member besides McCartney detested. Its whimsical, almost vaudevillian tone clashed with the band's increasingly sophisticated musical direction, and for some, it felt like a step backward. McCartney, however, was adamant about getting the song right, meticulously layering it with experimental studio techniques and unconventional sounds. What might have seemed playful on paper became exhausting in practice. It meant the band were stuck in the studio for days, reportedly weeks, while McCartney chased perfection. The relentless recording process took its toll on Starr, who described putting the song together as the worst session ever, adding, "It went on for weeks." For a drummer who thrived on spontaneity and groove, the endless repetition stripped away the joy of performance, turning music into labor. In complete contrast, one of the Beatles' most loved tracks was also a source of frustration for Starr. The recording process for Here Comes the Sun, written by George Harrison, was much less harmonious than the track's warm and radiant sound suggests. Beneath its gentle acoustic guitar and optimistic tone lies a surprisingly complex rhythmic structure. Starr struggled to hang on to the timing of the track, which shifts in unusual ways that defy standard rock patterns. While his tom fills ultimately became one of the song's defining features, many of them were improvised on the spot. Starr later admitted he could never quite remember what he had played, making it difficult to replicate or even fully internalize the arrangement. The timing constantly threw him off. George had been to India again, and he said, "I've got this song, it's in 7.5 time. I mean, he may as well have talked to me in Arabic. I can't think of counting to 7 for the beat. That's just not my brain." His comment reveals more than frustration. It highlights the widening gap between his intuitive playing style and the increasingly experimental musical ideas being brought into the band. If You've Got Trouble was another song that Ringo Starr was given to perform, but he didn't quite pull it off. The track, written by Lennon and McCartney, is often cited as one of their weakest efforts, with awkward lyrics and a melody that lacks the spark of their best work. Ringo wasn't happy about having to sing it, and that reluctance can be felt in the performance itself. Ultimately, the song was shelved and left unreleased for decades, quietly abandoned as the band moved on to stronger material. It stands as a rare example of a Beatles track that simply didn't meet their own standards. For Starr, it became yet another instance where the material failed to match his strengths, reinforcing his selective approach to what he chose to embrace. Taken together, these songs offer a revealing glimpse into Ringo Starr's experience within the Beatles. He may not have been the band's primary songwriter, but his perspective was invaluable. His reactions, whether enthusiasm or frustration, were rooted in authenticity. He didn't overanalyze, he felt. And in a band defined by innovation, ambition, and relentless creative evolution, that instinctive honesty made him indispensable. Even when he disliked a song, his presence shaped it. And perhaps that's the paradox of Ringo Starr. Even in the moments he struggled with, he was still an essential part of what made the Beatles extraordinary.